At Truliant, we're with you at every milestone, making it easier for you to shine. So you can saddle up each morning for more than a paycheck. Have the support to expand your horizon, the space to grow your family, and your brightest dreams never have to fade. At Truliant, we help you shine. That's brighter banking. Truliant Federal Credit Union.
Welcome to the Greater Conversations podcast. I'm Deetra Miller, the Director of Member Relations and Engagement at Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. We'll use this platform to showcase our local businesses, our community, and their stories. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I am super excited today because we have a couple of wonderful people here in the studio.
Thank you very much.
Well,
Thank
yes,
you.
Tim, you definitely count as a wonderful person. And of
okay.
course, Ethany Good, our Director of Marketing and Communications at Greater Winston-Salem, Inc., is a very special person. But we also have with us today two wonderful people from HandsOn Northwest North Carolina. We have Amy Lytle, who is the Executive Director, and we have Casey Capstick, who is the Corporate Engagement and Development Manager for HandsOn Northwest North Carolina. Ladies, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm really excited for everyone to learn more about you and what HandsOn Northwest North Carolina does. I've had the opportunity to know Amy for a few years, and I have sat under her tutelage under a program or two, which was fantastic, but we'll let you guys educate the audience. So Amy, let's start with you. I saw on your LinkedIn page something that I really love and I want to share with everybody. You said about yourself, I love being a thought leader with others, triggering aha moments. Talk a little bit about who you are and why you love triggering those aha moments.
Yeah. I just love unlocking possibility, right? In both individual people and in our community, and kind of always seeing how can we do more, do different, be better, to put it simply. I've always been a natural trainer. That's part of the work that we do here at HandsOn, is we mobilize people and organizations that inspire community change. So change is at the heart of our work, and that you do that kind of one person at a time, one organization at a time. And it's just always been important to me to just have people kind of unlock what's already in them. It's not that I'm some great guru who's going to impart all this knowledge. It's really about putting a different frame maybe around what people know, validating what people know, making connections between what people know, and putting that in the context of community work. How can we do this work together? How can we bring all of our diverse lived experience and diverse talents together to make the changes? You know, there's lots of great things about our community, and we celebrate those. And there's also stuff that we still need to work on, and we want to mobilize those people and those organizations working on that.
That's awesome. We'll take a deeper dive into those programming aspects, but we'll go ahead and switch it over to Casey really quickly so that you can talk a little bit about yourself. Now, I found a fun fact on your LinkedIn profile too.
Boy.
So I'm thinking that Casey, she is just all in on nonprofits and helping do all the things with HandsOn. But then I saw, wait, she's got a bachelor's in anthropology. Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Yeah. I am really interested in why people are the way they are. So I concentrated in archaeology first, and then realized I took all the classes and realized I don't like dirt. I don't like I don't like the sun. I don't like outdoors or heat. So
The indoorsy girl.
Yeah, I excavated at James Madison's at the slave quarters during my senior year, and while it was a great experience, not for me. Mm-hmm. I then also took all the cultural anthropology courses that really resonated with me more. I'm really intrigued on culture and differences and acceptance of those differences and living in a community where all of those differences are celebrated. So I love everything anthropology, and it mirrored well with my undergrad, my history degree as well. So I concentrated in history as well.
Excellent. I love that. Okay. So let's talk about what HandsOn Northwest North Carolina actually does. So,
So we work with about 500 different nonprofits.
whoa. Say that number again.
More than 500.
You're an organization that works with 500 wow.
More than, roughly, at any given point.
Wow.
More than 500 different organizations, not just here in Forsyth, but also in Stokes, Surry, Davie, Davidson, Yadkin, and now Iredell and Guilford counties.
In Charlotte area.
And into the
Wow.
Charlotte area, because once we had the relationship with United Way and Iredell, that kind of pulled us into that Charlotte market more. And really, we work and we walk alongside those organizations, helping them to be more effective and efficient in their work, whether that's a training or a workshop, access to resources, training and technical assistance. I do a lot of what I call the voice on the other end of the phone, on the other end of the Zoom, just helping people kind of figure out what they need and help them find it. And then in addition to that work with those nonprofits, we typically engage usually a couple thousand volunteers a year in service across that network. So we work with individual volunteers. We also do a lot of work with companies and businesses, helping them mobilize their employees in civic engagement and volunteer efforts. We'll work with civic clubs, with schools, faith communities. Yeah.
Wow.
So we're very small, but we have our hands and our fingers in a lot of different pies. For us, really the key thing is about engagement, is about getting everybody on the playing field. It's going to take all of us using all of our efforts to move the needle in creating a community we all want to live in and where we all can thrive.
And the one thing you'll hear us say a lot is, while we are small, we are mighty. And that's been quoted a couple times in reference to us in larger settings. So I think we pride ourselves on being small and mighty.
We punch above our weight because we really do take our role in terms of representing this wider network and this wider nonprofit ecosystem very seriously.
And I can put an example of that into context. I serve on the board of the YWCA, and they held a Hanes Brands product sale in order to raise money for their programs and services. Well, of course, this is held in the education building of the Coliseum and is an absolutely huge undertaking with thousands and thousands of shoppers and guests. So we needed hundreds of volunteers that one organization on its own is not able to manage, organize, and schedule, and the list goes on, right? And so the YWCA worked with HandsOn in order to facilitate that project. And so you're really making a lot of things possible for local nonprofits that they wouldn't be able to do on their own.
Yeah, I will say that Casey probably has PTSD. That almost broke Casey.
that's why I'm just like,
we are small. And that sale was exciting. I remember when we first met with the YWCA, they were like, oh, it's like 3 or 4 days. It's a couple hundred volunteers. It became 10 full days. It was over 900 volunteers.
Whoa.
I worked 72 hours at the sale. At the physical sale, I worked 72 hours.
Yeah, so that was very intense. And we pulled in our Vista member, we pulled in some of our board members to help us pull that off. We had a fantastic volunteer leader who is actually an executive director for one of the small grassroots organizations that we worked with, and she had some flexibility and really came, and I don't know what we would have done without her. Really helped us make all those logistics work, and we learned a lot.
Yeah, shout out Ellen.
Yeah,
she was great.
Ellen Forbes was fantastic. But I do think that is sort of I remember that initial meeting, and they came to us and said, we don't have the expertise, we don't have the capacity, and we at least certainly had the expertise. It was probably a little over our capacity than we had initially anticipated, but we made it work, and we pulled some rabbits out of our hats, and I think made sure that sale was more successful, at least from the volunteer side, than it had been in the past.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you work with the Ronald McDonald House?
We do. So Chuck Kraft, who is the executive director there, is actually a founding board chair of HandsOn, and so he was the board chair who hired me when we started HandsOn, and worked with him really closely for 5 years. We finally let him resign from the board.
Oh, but he's still in our programming, though. He's still part of HandsOn.
He's still part of HandsOn. In our network, we actually we have a named scholarship for him. So somebody from a youth serving organization can attend one of our signature training programs for free to recognize Chuck's enduring commitment to youth and families in our community. But yeah, we work with him on volunteer projects. So oftentimes we'll have a corporate group that we're working with. We can send them out to the house and have them do a variety of things, or Yeah, they've got some pretty good infrastructure. They don't need us all the time, but
Right.
they're a long-standing partner.
My wife is the marketing manager
great.
there. So, yeah,
Right?
Stephanie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Oh my God.
It's also a very close-knit, nonprofit ecosystem. We're large. I mean, Forsyth County has the largest number of nonprofits per capita.
Second highest.
Second highest. Really second only to Durham County.
That's in North Carolina?
In North Carolina.
Wow.
And even though it's large, we are very interconnected, right? And people pop up in our network, and then they'll show up in a couple different other places in our network. Your role with the YW is a good example with that, or your wife's role with Ronald McDonald House. It is really, I think of it more as an ecosystem. We all have a role to play in it to keep it healthy.
So, that's just a lot. Hundreds of thousands of people that you coordinate for volunteer operations, and those are operations. That's one aspect of what you guys do at HandsOn, but you also work with, you mentioned nonprofits, and you have some programming for them, and then you work with for-profit businesses as well. Talk a little bit, Casey, about some of the things that you have done recently, specifically with Greater Winston-Salem, because I'm thinking of one or two
Yes.
that you have done.
Well, we just recently, 2 weeks ago, I believe, hosted a volunteer board speed dating event for the Under 40 Advisory Committee. This gave them the opportunity to meet with nonprofits meeting with the advisory board who are interested in serving as a board member, gave them the opportunity to chat in an intimate setting and connect to determine if they were a good fit to be a board member. And that is one of the events that we host that is great, gets great comments, get great feedback, really intimate, and a great way to facilitate the opportunity for an individual to serve on a board. We also offer that for volunteer opportunities as well, but find that we are able to meet with specific groups for those board opportunities. So it gives nonprofits who might not have the accessibility to get in front of those types of individuals to then share what their opportunity or what they're looking for, what their organization does. And then if it's not a good fit for a board member, there's also just volunteer opportunities. The individuals can share out the messaging, and it's overall a great experience for everyone on board.
And ultimately, the purpose and the mission for the Winston Under 40 program is to engage young professionals in the community.
Yes.
So that they really feel that sense of belonging here, put down roots, and stay and contribute to the workforce and raise their families here. And so by offering those opportunities, we're really fulfilling the mission of the Winston Under 40 program to facilitate community involvement.
And I'll have to say that advisory committee, they were great. They were very involved. They had great feedback. They were so excited to be there. A lot of them selected the process is we tell them that when you're dating, quote unquote dating them, that this isn't marriage, and so you can then sign up to go for a second date. And there were so many of those individuals that selected nearly every nonprofit to have a second date with.
Wow.
And so that just shows that these individuals really are interested in getting involved, and also shows that the nonprofits in the area are a value and are something that people are interested in helping and serving with.
And I think it's a really great educational event, too. I think people don't know, right? They might think of a few well-known or well-branded nonprofits, Ronald McDonald House, the Red Cross, maybe some of the larger ones here locally, Senior Services would be one, or Crisis Control Ministry. But they don't know these smaller groups that are really doing excellent work, really important work on the ground in a grassroots way. And it just sort of illuminates that work, even if they're not the perfect fit for a board member at that time. It's a huge community education piece, and people just get to see really the depth of that ecosystem that we talked about in a much more meaningful way than if they were just looking at a website.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of boards, I think that is how I first met you, Amy.
Yeah.
Through board education. Talk a little bit about how you help nonprofits or for-profit boards and get them on the right track.
Yeah, so we had gotten a small grant from what is now known as the Shallowford Foundation to do some board training work out with folks serving on boards or wanting to serve on boards out in Louisville Clemens. And we have an excellent retired RJR exec who does some training work for us. And
My favorite human to exist.
He is a great human. He is
I
a great
love him.
human. He's been a former board member of HandsOn. He works with more than 300 nonprofits every year, sort of in the second act that he has. And we've developed with him a really good sort of a board training curriculum that really, in sort of a half day, helps individuals go onto boards and really kind of know what they're supposed to do. Serving on a nonprofit board, that's where the rubber meets the road. They're really the ones in charge. They set the strategic vision for the organization. They set the budget. They hire and review the executive director. And a lot of people have had no formal training into how to do that. And it's a very different process than what you see in the for-profit world. So we really want to make sure that the people that we're recruiting to serve on boards, we give them an opportunity to really know what they're doing before they step in that room. So we do have these sort of one-off board training classes. We do a board basics class and a board leadership development class. We also have a series called Project Blueprint, which is specifically to train folks who are traditionally underrepresented on boards, especially leaders of color. And then we do a speed dating with them at the end. That's their capstone experience, because training is great, but you've got to place them if you really want to have boards that look more like the organizations and the communities those organizations serve and look more like the community. I mean, unfortunately, still in this day and age in 2024, the vast majority of nonprofit board members are white men over 50. Some of my favorite people, including my spouse, is a white man over 50, but that's not typically the people that nonprofits are serving. And so really wanting to make sure you have a diversity of lived experiences, that you have governing structures in the nonprofit sector that reflect the communities and the individuals they serve.
Tell me, Casey, since you have been with HandsOn, what has been one of the favorite projects you've worked on that maybe didn't involve 900 volunteers?
Well, the first thing that came to mind was I really enjoyed our YEC, which was our Youth Engagement Coalition. That's not... Well, it has something to do with volunteers, but we hosted that program at the height of the pandemic, and it was to really help youth who were wanting to get more involved in volunteer opportunities. And a lot of times they would face nonprofits not working with them because they were under the age of 18. And so we then, I personally like working with the youth. I partially because I'm having a crisis about my age. I just turned 30.
Wouldn't know it.
My first birthday, I turned 26 within my first few days, and that was a big crisis with HandsOn because I'm like, now I'm closer to 30 than I am, closer to 30 than I'm 20. Now I'm actually 30 and still with HandsOn. So I think that's why I like working with the youth. But that has always mentoring and being able to shepherd along another generation that comes after, especially as someone who identifies closely with the Gen Z population and sort of how they operate with their values and morals within the view of the world. That has always been something that has been important to me and something I enjoyed doing. So
I love that.
Yeah, so there was a youth leader in Forsyth County that actually came to us with what would become the Youth Engagement Coalition, and she was a high school student at the time, and that was my very last in-person meeting before COVID. Was actually met her at her high school, and they closed the next week. And what I was doing as I was walking, just finishing up doing as I was getting ready to leave to come to this podcast, was to write a recommendation letter for her, because she's now a junior at UNC Chapel Hill. She's a Moorhead Scholar, and she's trying to get into a competitive London study abroad program. And so I got to write more glowing things about Serena Horner. And I said, we have an affiliate in London, and I said I'd be more than happy to connect her or anyone else on your study abroad program if they want to get civically engaged in London. And so I could think of no higher praise for her and her work and her level of care and commitment to our community than recommending her to my colleagues in London if she would get into that program.
That's amazing. Okay. Tell me this. How long has HandsOn Northwest North Carolina been in existence?
We were founded in the fall of 07, 2000, right? Great time to start a new nonprofit here in Winston-Salem, especially when we were supposed to have all this great backing from Wachovia. That kind of disappeared. Right, exactly. But we had been founded by the merger of two unincorporated entities. There had been a group working on what we call capacity building, working on the nonprofit training side. For a little while, they had a couple of very, very part-time contractors. They were actually working out of the Nonprofit Resource Center at the public library. We still have a good connection with Jody Lohman, who's the librarian there, but they were getting paid kind of out of a pot at United Way that funders were putting a mix of their funds into. And then a group that was coming out of the Winston-Salem Foundation called the ECHO Council, which stood for Everybody Can Help Out. And they were really looking at levels of volunteer engagement, levels of civic engagement. And they decided to merge, form an actual 501c3. And then they came and found me because I've been doing similar work in Guilford County for quite a number of years, and I had taken some time off when my daughter was born. So that consultant called me when my daughter was about 1 and said, "Isn't it time for you to go back to work?"
Oh my goodness.
We're getting ready to open an office. And I was like, okay, great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what is coming up for HandsOn in the near future? I feel like there's something that you guys have brewing.
I'm very excited. Amy
Yeah.
knows I'm very excited about this. So,
Well, in sort of that organization that I worked with in Guilford County, which has been around now for, I haven't worked with them we're in our 17th year at HandsOn, right? Which is kind of incredible. But that organization, which had been around for 60 years, is winding down operations for a variety of reasons. But they reached out to us wanting to make sure that there were these core volunteer engagement mechanisms, infrastructure that would still survive and be active in Guilford County. So that's when they reached out to us. So we're going to be making sure that there's a way for individual volunteers to get connected, that we'll be working with some companies and nonprofits there. We have a very strong partner in the Guilford Nonprofit Consortium that does a lot of the training work. And so we're kind of working now more closely with them, making sure that we are complementary in what we're offering and pointing organizations to each other when they're offering something we're not, and vice versa. And then we're working with a lot of companies that still want to get involved and want to do that work. Can we now support them in a meaningful way?
Wow.
Casey, anything else you want to say about that?
no, I'm really
She's
excited.
excited.
I'm really excited. I personally enjoy creating things, so we're getting the opportunity to sort of build this, and it's really expanding a lot of my works, mostly with the corporate realm. So I'm being able to create new connections, establish sort of the work we've already been doing, which I've been all in with HandsOn, and so I think the work we do is amazing, and I'm really excited to share that with corporations and volunteers in Guilford County.
I love it.
Sort of being pulled in that direction. We're being pulled more in Charlotte, the Charlotte market, because there's not a ton of nonprofit and volunteer infrastructure. There's lots of stuff happening, but there's not a lot of infrastructure there to support that work, and so we've been kind of called upon to be more active in that market as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
We have a staff of 3.
Yeah.
You're doing a mighty work for a staff of 3.
We're trying to be realistic. We're trying to not say yes to everything, but when you see something that's in the heart of our mission, and we know we have this expertise, you kind of want to do it, right? You kind of want to figure out, can you pull a rabbit out of your hat? Can we do the Hanes brand sale? All that kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious to know, because you have the infrastructure playbook for volunteerism. How have you seen that better a community? You mentioned there's a lot of things going on in other communities, but they may not have the infrastructure. How does that make the community different when they actually do? And how does that maybe retain or bring in folks to live, work, and play in those areas, especially here in Winston-Salem?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing is research has shown that the number one reason why people stop volunteering is poor volunteer management practices. So they go to a nonprofit, they feel that the nonprofit hasn't valued their time, they haven't given them appropriate or meaningful work.
They don't know why they're doing it.
They don't know why they're doing. They don't see how what they're doing connects to the bigger picture. And the thing is that volunteer does not just stop volunteering for that organization. They drop out of the volunteer pool in a community. It becomes, I tried volunteering, that wasn't for me, right? It's not just like, organization X loses a volunteer, the community loses. And then there's somebody on the sidelines, right? And as I said before, we need everybody on the playing field, everybody sharing their skills and talents, bringing their passions, bringing their interests to move needles forward. So we find in organizations, in communities where there is some infrastructure, where there is a real healthy nonprofit ecosystem, that nonprofits are supporting each other, so they're cross-referring volunteers. If a volunteer's not a good fit for them, they're not just letting that volunteer walk with their feet, vote with their feet, as we say, and walk out the door never to be seen by anyone ever again, but saying, hey, you're not the best fit for us, but talk to some folks at HandsOn or talk to my colleague at this organization. I think that would be a better fit. You find communities where it's more plug and play. So we have this online portal where people can log on at any point. There's more than 300 nonprofits on that portal. Usually at any given time, at least 100 different volunteer opportunities. So we make it really easy for people to know what's available, to see how they can get involved. Removing those barriers to service, removing those barriers to participation is huge. And that's where you really get a lot of people kind of showing up in all kinds of different ways, not just in service, but they're showing up to vote. They're showing up to serve on public boards and committees. They're showing up to be part of public processes that improve their communities. And that's what you can really see. It's not just the usual suspects.
And I'm sure another big part of it as well is working with corporations to mobilize their employee base to improve the community.
Yeah, I personally always say is when I work with a corporation is we're leveraging their corporate resources to better the community, and the community is where their employees are working, and to sort of I encourage the corporation to look at their employee as the community and look at it as a whole human. While, yes, they are a person and they are part of the wheel that makes your business go, they have a whole home life. If they aren't, fulfilled, if they aren't able to meet, if there's all these other problems that comes into the workplace and affects the bottom line. So I like to mirror both of sort of the corporate world of bottom line dollars, and they obviously have a goal, but how can putting an emphasis on community need help that and sort of speak their language? That's what I really enjoy, being able to find the happy medium between those two in my work.
Yeah, and I think also when we do a little quick and dirty evaluation with the corporate volunteers that come through one of our managed projects, and we ask, like, does this make you feel more connected to your community? Do you feel proud to be a member of a company that does this work? So we really do help companies both align to their employees' interests as well as their own kind of corporate interests and what the company wants, and really kind of make that marriage happen in a way that benefits everyone. It is, for some companies, it's a very much of a PR and marketing thing, and we're aware of this, but it's really a HR piece too. It really is about team building and making these employees feel proud to be part of that company, feel proud that their company has this corporate and civic role that they're playing, that they get to be part of it, that the company is supporting their volunteer efforts, regardless of what that might look like. And it looks different at companies of different sizes and business operations.
I love that. Listen, for anyone that's listening right now and they're like, I really want to know more about what volunteer opportunities are available, or there might be someone in management like, I've really got to get with Casey and talk more about how we can mobilize our employees. Where did they need to go to get in touch with you and learn more?
I would say our website is going to always be the best, which is handsonnwnc.org. And if you're on that page and you're with a corporation, you're going to go to the corporation or business tab, and that will have all of your information there. And you can shoot me an email, and I'm happy to chat with you.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to our landing page at handsonnwnc.org, you'll see 3 buckets, for companies and businesses, for volunteers, and for nonprofits. So it's really easy to connect and see what we do. If you want to go directly to our volunteer matching portal, the volunteer matching site, it's volunteer.handsonnwnc.org. So kind of easy to remember, and that will take you right to that.
That platform is called Get Connected.
It will take you right to our Get Connected site where you can. It's free to create an account. You can see all the volunteer opportunities and then sign up for things or express interest, in your information
and
goes directly to that organization.
And it's free for nonprofits as well. So if you are not on that, if you're not on Get Connected or on the other Love Out Loud's volunteer platform, you're able to create an account for free to then recruit volunteers as well.
That's awesome. I've learned so much today. So is there anything that we didn't talk about today that you want to make sure the listeners know?
Well, we talked about the importance of volunteering, and that I also want to highlight that we are seeing a decline in volunteering in the United States, North America, but I believe, if I remember correctly, we're not seeing that in globally, but we are in the U.S. and North America seeing a decline, sort of, that never bounced back from COVID.
Yeah.
So while we get to share all the great things, we have to make sure we're getting it to the right people and that they're able to implement those different items and really speak to volunteers to get them back in the door, whether that be meeting the volunteers where they're at or at where the organization's, sort of trying to figure out how to increase those numbers back to pre-COVID.
I mean, I think volunteering does look different today than it did pre-COVID, and will continue to look different. I think volunteers, the demographics of who's getting involved looks different. What they want to do looks different. And so part of what we do is try to walk alongside organizations helping to kind of reimagine what their volunteer program looks like. Who are they engaging? How are they engaging them? Doing so with a kind of a more equitable lens, kind of trying to remove the barriers between those who have traditionally served versus those who have traditionally been served, kind of undoing some of those power dynamics in a way that really will increase the volunteer base, because we do. I mean, everybody needs more volunteers. So we need to make sure that we're messaging that volunteering is for service is for everyone, no exceptions, and then ensuring that on the organization side that they're really ready for everyone to volunteer, no exceptions, in a way that's meaningful to both parties.
I love that. I love that. Well, Amy, Casey, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
And for everyone listening, again, go to handsonnwnc.org and learn more about the organization. Sign up for an account on Get Connected so that you can learn more about volunteer opportunities.
We also have a great monthly newsletter that goes out to nonprofit folks and corporate folks. You can sign up for that. And we also have a sort of a quarterly newsletter that goes out for volunteers, and they can do that right from our homepage as well.
Perfect. All right. Well, for everyone listening, until next time. We know you enjoyed this podcast today, so join us for the next episode of Greater Conversations. By the way, you can follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Be sure to smash that subscribe button. Also, be sure to visit our website at winstonsalem.com. The views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and not necessarily those of our sponsors, distributors, or hosting companies. This podcast is copyrighted and cannot be reproduced without expressed written consent of Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. or your toast.